Fleet Commander Mev watched from the command deck as Earth's final defensive line collapsed. Through the view screen, the beautiful blue-green planet rotated slowly, seemingly oblivious to its fate. The Conclave's decision had been unanimous. This species was too unpredictable, too adaptable, too dangerous to join galactic society. Quarantine was the only option. Last human battle group detected, Commander, reported Officer Dren. They're positioning between us and the planet. Mev's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of respect. How many ships? 7 vessels, all damaged. Their flagship is broadcasting a message. Display it, Mev ordered. A human appeared on screen. Gray-haired, face lined with exhaustion, but spine straight and eyes defiant. Admiral Toran of Earth's United Defense Force. This is Admiral Toran to Conclave forces. You've made your point. Our orbital defenses are gone, our colonies cut off. But know this, Earth will never surrender. You can blockade us, isolate us, but we will endure. Humans always do. Mev leaned forward. Admiral Toran, the Conclave's decision is final. Your species has been evaluated and deemed too volatile for unrestricted galactic access. This blockade will remain until Earth accepts protectorate status. Toran's laugh was harsh. You mean, until we accept being prisoners on our own planet? Call it what you wish. Surrender now, and we'll allow your remaining ships safe passage to Earth. And if we refuse? Mev's skin rippled with discomfort. Then we will eliminate the final obstacle to our blockade. You have 10 minutes to decide. The transmission ended. Mev turned to the tactical display where 7 tiny points of light, the last human warships, formed a thin line between the Conclave fleet and Earth. They cannot possibly think they'll win, Officer Dren said. Mev's tendrils curled thoughtfully. They don't fight to win. They fight because surrender isn't in their nature. 9 minutes later, Admiral Toran's response came. Not as words, but as action. The 7 human vessels accelerated toward the Conclave fleet, weapons firing. Evasive maneuvers, Mev ordered calmly. Target their propulsion systems only. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 30 minutes. 6 human ships destroyed, the 7th, Toran's flagship, critically damaged and spiraling toward Earth's atmosphere. Should we tractor the flagship? Asked Dren. No, Mev replied, watching as the burning vessel entered Earth's atmosphere. Let them have their symbolic moment. The Admiral chose this end. As Toran's ship disappeared into Earth's atmosphere, Mev addressed the fleet. Establish blockade formation. No vessel enters or leaves Earth's gravity well without authorization. Communication satellites can remain functional, but any attempting to transmit military data will be neutralized. On view screens across the Conclave fleet, Earth continued its placid rotation. Night was falling across the Americas, and city lights were beginning to twinkle along coastlines and throughout inland regions. Soon, those watching from orbit noticed something unusual. The lights were going out, city by city, continent by continent, until the planet's night side was wrapped in darkness. Earth was mourning. They will adjust, Mev said, not entirely convinced. All species eventually accept reality. Officer Dren didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. Commander, do you believe Earth will ever accept protectorate status? Mev watched the darkened planet. They must. The alternative would be their extinction, and despite their flaws, no one in the Conclave desires that outcome. The darkness below seemed to deepen, as if Earth itself had turned its face away from the stars, and from those who now controlled its destiny. 6 months had passed since the blockade began. Fleet Commander Mev stood at the observation deck, watching Earth rotate beneath the Conclave fleet. Unlike the other worlds the Conclave had quarantined over the millennia, Earth showed no signs of disintegration or chaos. There had been no civil wars, no mass hysteria, no collapse of social order, just a quiet, steadfast refusal to accept Conclave authority. The monthly report, Commander, Officer Dren said, approaching with a data tablet. Mev accepted it with a tendril. Anything unusual? No attempts to breach the blockade this month. Power consumption has stabilized. Agricultural activity increased by 7%. They're adapting, Mev noted. Becoming more self-sufficient. Yes. There's also been increased activity in their educational networks, particularly in physics, engineering, and xenobiology. Mev's skin rippled with interest. They study us even as we study them. Should we restrict their information networks? No. Let them learn. Knowledge without application poses no threat. What Mev didn't say was how the humans' resilience had begun to earn a grudging respect. The Conclave had expected riots, demands, for negotiation, perhaps even mass suicide events, as had occurred on Praxis 3rd during its quarantine. Instead, Earth had gone quiet, but purposeful. Humans went about their lives, rebuilt damaged infrastructure, and buried their dead without the involvement of the Watchers above. Beneath the scarred surface of the moon, Admiral Toron limped down a narrow corridor carved through lunar rock. His body still bore the evidence of his desperate escape: burns along his right side, a prosthetic leg, and one eye replaced with a cybernetic implant that never quite matched the color of his remaining natural eye. "Admiral on deck," announced a technician as Toron entered what the staff had nicknamed the Burrow, a sprawling underground facility that had escaped Conclave detection during their initial assault. "Status report," Toron said, lowering himself carefully into a chair at the central table where 5 other people waited. Dr. Lin, head of the Aurora project, activated a holographic display. "Phase 1 is complete. The nanofabricators have reached optimal production levels." "Quantity?" Toron asked. "We'll have enough to proceed by month 9. The real challenge remains delivery and synchronization." Professor Kell nodded in agreement. "The quantum entanglement network is operational but limited. We can communicate with our Earth facilities without Conclave detection, but linking billions of individual nodes simultaneously." He shook his head. "It's never been attempted." "It will work," insisted Dr. Lin. "The math is sound. All we need is for every participating human to activate their receiver at the predetermined time." "And if the Conclave detects the energy surge?" asked Security Chief Park. Toron's expression hardened. "They won't be looking for it. They're watching for ships, weapons, conventional communications. Not this." The meeting continued for another hour, each specialist providing updates on their piece of the most ambitious project in human history. As they spoke, similar meetings were taking place in hidden facilities across Earth, in underwater research stations, in repurposed mine shafts, in ordinary-looking buildings that concealed extraordinary work. Later, alone in his quarters, Toron accessed a secure feed showing Earth from one of their few remaining stealth satellites. From this distance, the planet looked peaceful, undamaged, free. The blockade ships were barely visible, tiny specks interrupting the perfect curve of Earth's horizon. "We're coming," he whispered to the image. "We haven't forgotten how to fight. We've just learned when to wait." On the Conclave command ship, Mev made a personal log entry before retiring. Day 182 of Earth quarantine. The humans continue their strange, quiet resistance. They rebuild, they adapt, they persist. The Conclave believes they are resigned to their fate, but I am not convinced. I've studied their history. Humans have never accepted captivity, merely endured it while planning escape. I've recommended increased vigilance to Central Command, but my concerns have been dismissed as excessive. I hope they are right, and I am wrong. 1 year into the blockade, Earth appeared subdued. Farming collectives had replaced global supply chains. Local manufacturing had surged to compensate for the loss of interplanetary trade. From orbit, the planet showed signs of adaptation. Vast solar farms where there had once been suburbs, vertical agriculture towers rising from city centers, offshore wind platforms dotting coastlines. In the Conclave fleet, complacency had set in. Patrol routes became routine. Analysis of human communications grew cursory rather than comprehensive. Only Fleet Commander Mev maintained rigorous standards, much to the annoyance of officers who considered the assignment beneath their abilities. "Commander," Officer Dren called from his station. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the northern hemisphere." Mev moved to examine the display. Pattern? Inconsistent. Brief energy spikes in multiple locations, but they dissipate too quickly for source identification. Solar flare interference? Possibly, Dren admitted. The readings correlate with a minor solar event that began 3 hours ago, Mev studied. The data longer than necessary. Something about the pattern seemed deliberate, but without evidence, raising alarms would only reinforce the growing perception that the commander had become obsessed with phantom human threats. Continue monitoring, Mev finally ordered. If the pattern persists after the solar activity subsides, notify me immediately. The energy spikes didn't persist. They simply changed location, appearing in different regions, always coinciding, with natural phenomena that could explain them away. Had anyone analyzed the global pattern over weeks rather than hours, they might have noticed that every major population center had experienced these anomalies exactly once, like a signal being tested and confirmed. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a repurposed mining facility now called Station Depth, Dr. Lin addressed a room of engineers and physicists. Behind her, screens displayed real-time data from test sites around the world. The nanite dispersion. Tests are successful, she announced. Each release site confirms 97% atmospheric retention, with spread rates exactly as modeled. We are proceeding to Phase 3. A young engineer raised his hand. The quantum receivers? Production is at 80%, confirmed Lin. Distribution remains our biggest challenge, but the civilian networks have performed admirably. What she didn't need to explain was how ordinary people had become the backbone of humanity's response. School teachers passing quantum receivers to parents disguised as educational toys. Delivery drivers with hidden compartments in their vehicles. Religious groups distributing them as meditation aids. Billions of devices, each smaller than a coin, carried hand-to-hand across every continent. On the lunar base, Admiral Toran reviewed the latest reports with Professor Kell. The quantum entanglement network now linked every major human settlement, operating entirely outside conventional communications that the Conclave monitored. We're ready for the large-scale test, Kell said. 10 million nodes, simultaneously activated. Toran nodded. Will the Conclave detect it? They'll detect something, but the energy signature will mimic atmospheric ionization from cosmic ray showers. We've timed it to coincide with a meteor. Shower for additional cover. And if they investigate anyway? Kell smiled thinly. Then we'll learn how close they're watching. Either way, valuable information. The test was scheduled for what had once been called Tuesday, though such designations mattered less in a world refocused on immediate survival. As the meteor shower began, 10 million people across Earth's northern hemisphere removed their quantum receivers from hiding places, activated them simultaneously, and for 90 seconds experienced something unprecedented. Direct awareness of 9,999,999 other human minds. The test ended. The devices were hidden away again. Data was collected through the entanglement network and analyzed. Everything had worked exactly as theorized. In orbit, Officer Dren noted unusual atmospheric ionization during the meteor shower, but attributed it to natural causes. The report was filed and forgotten by everyone except Fleet Commander Mev, who added it to a growing collection of anomalies that individually signified nothing, but together formed a pattern that increasingly troubled the commander's dreams. 18 months into Earth's quarantine, the Conclave High Council decided a formal diplomatic mission was warranted. The humans had accepted their circumstances with unexpected dignity. Perhaps they were ready for limited privileges within their confinement. Ambassador Leary was chosen for this delicate assignment. A veteran diplomat who had successfully negotiated 17 planetary transitions to Protectorate status. Unlike most Conclave officials, Leary had studied human culture beyond security assessments. She had read their literature, listened to their music, and believed she understood them better than her military counterparts. Fleet Commander Mev welcomed the ambassador aboard the command ship with appropriate ceremony, but didn't bother concealing skepticism. The humans will present a cooperative face, Mev warned during their briefing. But I don't believe they've accepted their situation. Ambassador Leary's membranous wings fluttered in what translated as polite disagreement. Your caution is noted, Commander, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Their communications show no ongoing resistance planning. Their resource allocation prioritizes civilian needs over military rebuilding. They've even established a transition council to interface with Conclave representatives. Precisely my concern, Mev replied. It's too perfect, too aligned with Conclave expectations. Leary's translator rendered a sound of diplomatic patience. Sometimes, Commander, beings simply make rational choices when faced with immutable realities. The ambassador's shuttle departed for Earth the following day, landing in what had once been called Geneva, but was now designated as Human Administrative Region 12. A delegation of 7 humans met the ship. 4 women, 3 men, all wearing simple gray uniforms with no insignia of former nations or military ranks. Their spokesperson, a woman who introduced herself only as Delegate Rivera, welcomed Ambassador Leary with formal courtesy. The Transition Council is honored by your presence. Ambassador, we have prepared comprehensive reports on Earth's adaptation progress for your review. For 3 days, Leary was given carefully orchestrated tours of rebuilding efforts, efficient vertical farms, solar energy installations, educational facilities now focused on sustainable technologies rather than space exploration. Everything demonstrated acceptance of Earth's new reality. Yet something felt wrong. In unguarded moments, Leary noticed things that contradicted the narrative of peaceful resignation. The way civilians looked skyward when they thought no one was watching, the absence of children in public spaces, the odd energy efficiency of buildings that seemed to consume less power than their functions should require. On the final evening, during a formal dinner, Leary decided on a direct approach. Your adaptation has been remarkable, she told the assembled delegates. But I sense underlying currents. If there are concerns or needs the conclave might address within quarantine parameters, now is the time to voice them. Delegate Rivera's smile remained diplomatic. We've learned to focus on what we can control, Ambassador. The rest is academic. Later, in her private report to the High Council, Leary wrote, The humans present a convincing facade of acceptance, but I believe it masks continued rejection of protectorate status. They are planning something, though I cannot determine what. I recommend maintaining maximum security protocols despite appearances of compliance. The Council dismissed her concerns as overly cautious, noting that even the vigilant fleet commander, Mev, had reported no significant security incidents in months. What neither Leary nor the Council knew was that during her 3-day visit, the final components of Project Aurora had been distributed worldwide. The ambassador's presence had provided perfect cover for the last major movement of personnel and materials, as security forces focused on her protection, rather than monitoring patterns in civilian activity. On the lunar base, Admiral Torin watched the ambassador's shuttle return to orbit. Did it work? He asked the communications officer. Perfectly, sir. All final phase packages delivered while their sensors were focused on diplomatic security. Toran nodded. Activate the countdown. 72 hours from mark. Throughout Earth, and in hidden bases across the solar system, a simple message propagated through the quantum network. Aurora initiates in 72 hours. Prepare receivers. 3 billion devices were removed from hiding places. 3 billion people waited, counting down the hours, preparing for humanity's answer to those who thought they would mourn quietly forever. The Aurora began at dawn over the Pacific. Like many mornings since the blockade, Officer Dren was the first to notice something unusual in Earth's atmosphere. A faint luminescence, similar to an aurora borealis, but occurring at equatorial latitudes where such phenomena were scientifically impossible. Commander, he called, you should see this. Mev had been reviewing supply requisitions, but immediately moved to the observation station. The glow was spreading, rippling across the atmosphere in patterns too regular to be natural. Analysis, Mev demanded. Unknown energy signature, Commander. It's ionizing the upper atmosphere, but we can't identify the source. Scanning for launch signatures or radiation consistent with weapons deployment, another officer reported. Nothing detected. Mev's skin darkened with tension. Full alert status. I want every sensor we have focused on that phenomenon. As the Conclave fleet scrambled to understand what was happening, the glow intensified and spread. Within an hour, it had encircled the planet. Shimmering patterns raced across the stratosphere. Mathematical sequences, geometric progressions, that changed too quickly for orbital sensors to fully document. In homes and shelters across Earth, people removed their quantum receivers from hiding places. Parents helped children activate the unfamiliar devices. Hospital staff brought them to patients. Prison guards delivered them to inmates. For this moment, all human divisions had been temporarily set aside. On a designated frequency that propagated through the quantum entanglement network, Admiral Toran's voice reached billions. Citizens of Earth. For 18 months we have endured isolation and blockade. We have been patient. We have been prepared. Today, we act as one. Activate your receivers on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3 billion quantum receivers activated simultaneously. The nanites dispersed throughout Earth's atmosphere responded, creating a planetary-scale quantum field that briefly, for just 7 minutes, linked every participating human consciousness into a single networked entity, while simultaneously generating an electromagnetic pulse tuned precisely to the frequency of conclave shield technology. Aboard the command ship, alarms blared as systems failed. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow over the bridge as Mev fought to understand what was happening. "Shields are down across the fleet," reported a panicked officer. "All ships affected simultaneously." "Impossible," Mev replied, but the evidence was irrefutable. Whatever the humans had done had bypassed every conclave defense as if they didn't exist. On view screens still functioning, the glowing atmosphere had transformed into something new. Patterns that mimicked human neural activity at a planetary scale. Earth itself appeared to be thinking. "Commander," Officer Dren's voice cracked with disbelief. Multiple launch signatures detected, not from the surface, from lunar orbit, from the asteroid belt, from orbital positions we've been monitoring for months with no signs of activity. Hundreds of ships rose from hidden bases, some newly built in secret underground facilities, others salvaged and repaired after the initial defeat, all cloaked by technology the Conclave had believed beyond human capability. At the lunar base, Admiral Toran experienced something beyond description. His consciousness temporarily merged with billions of others, yet somehow maintaining individual identity within the collective. Every human connected to the network could feel the presence of all others, their fear, their determination, their unified purpose. Through this unprecedented neural link, complex instructions flowed without need for verbal communication. Ship captains received tactical guidance directly into their awareness. Defense systems operated with perfect synchronization. 3 billion minds worked as one, coordinated yet distinct. In orbit, Mev watched in stunned disbelief as the human fleet emerged from hiding places that had been under constant surveillance. The aurora-like glow intensified, and suddenly Mev understood. They were never broken, the commander whispered. They were preparing. The battle for Earth's freedom unfolded with a precision that left the Conclave fleet reeling. With shields disabled by the atmospheric aurora effect, Conclave vessels found themselves suddenly vulnerable. The human ships, smaller but more maneuverable, executed coordinated attack patterns that seemed impossibly synchronized. "How are they communicating?" demanded Mev as another coordinated strike disabled 3 Conclave cruisers simultaneously. "We're jamming all frequencies." Officer Dren worked frantically at his console. "Unknown, Commander. There's no detectable communication between their vessels, yet they're operating as a perfectly coordinated unit." What neither could understand was that conventional communication had become unnecessary. Through the quantum network temporarily linking human minds, information flowed at the speed of thought. Ship captains didn't need to receive orders. They simply knew what the collective had determined was optimal. Admiral Toran, his consciousness still merged with the network, experienced the battle from thousands of perspectives simultaneously. He felt the focused determination of fighter pilots, the calculated precision of weapons officers, the tense alertness of damage control teams, all functioning as extensions of a single purpose. When a Conclave dreadnought targeted Earth's largest remaining city with its primary weapon, 17 human vessels simultaneously altered course to intercept, sacrificing themselves to absorb the blast. Toran felt each captain's decision form not as words, but as absolute certainty. Geometric proofs of necessity clicking into place across the shared consciousness. Aboard the Conclave command ship, Mev made a tactical decision that would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. Instead of continuing a battle against an enemy using unknown technology and incomprehensible coordination, the commander ordered a strategic withdrawal to the edge of the lunar orbit. "We're retreating?" Officer Dren asked, shock evident in his voice. "We're regrouping," Mev corrected. "Order all vessels to fall back to position Alpha 6. Maintain defensive formation, but cease offensive operations. As the Conclave fleet withdrew, the human ships did not pursue. They formed a protective sphere around Earth, weapons ready but not firing. The aurora effect continued to shimmer across the planet's atmosphere, a clear warning that whatever had disabled Conclave shields remained active. 6 hours into the standoff, the quantum network linking human minds began to degrade as expected. The nanite-generated field couldn't sustain itself indefinitely. As individual consciousness reasserted itself, Admiral Turan felt the collective slowly dissolving, like waking from a dream that had felt more real than reality. In the final moments of connection, a decision formed across the collective, not issued by any single leader, but arising from the merged wisdom of billions. They would not destroy the Conclave fleet. They would not demand unconditional surrender. They would offer peace. As the quantum field collapsed completely, Turan found himself alone in his mind for the first time in hours, sitting in the command chair of the lunar base with tears streaming down his face. The experience of union, of billions of minds thinking as one while somehow remaining themselves, had been overwhelming, transcendent. "Admiral," his communications officer said gently, "you asked to be notified when you could speak again. The channel to the Conclave flagship is open." Turan wiped his eyes, straightened in his chair, and nodded. On the screen before him appeared Fleet Commander Mev, 4 eyes blinking in what humans had learned was an expression of cautious respect. "Admiral Turan," Mev said, "I was informed. You perished during our initial engagement. Reports of my death were convenient," Turan replied. "Commander Mev, I am authorized to offer terms." "Terms?" Mev's skin rippled with what might have been surprise. "Your forces have the tactical advantage. Why offer terms rather than demands?" "Because we're human," Turan said simply. "And despite what the Conclave believes, that doesn't make us conquerors. It makes us survivors, adapters, and when given the chance, peacemakers." The peace conference convened 3 months later aboard the Nexus, a massive neutral space station constructed specifically for this historic meeting, at the edge of what had once been the quarantine zone. The station's central chamber, a soaring dome of transparent alloy that offered an unobstructed view of both Earth and the assembled Conclave fleet, hosted representatives from all 27 Conclave species. Most were seeing humans in person, for the first time. They had expected vengeful warriors fresh from victory, perhaps still glowing with the power that had turned their planet's sky into a weapon. Instead, they found composed diplomats in simple uniforms, their only distinction, subtle blue pins shaped like Earth's aurora. No weapons, no threats, just calm determination in their eyes and detailed proposals in their hands. Dr. Lin led the scientific delegation, her data on the aurora technology presented with complete transparency. Professor Kell headed the cultural exchange team, offering insights into human art, philosophy, and social structures. And at the center of it all stood Admiral Turan, the man who had fallen burning from the sky only to rise again from lunar dust. The negotiations lasted 17 days. Debates grew heated at times, particularly from the Vrex delegation, whose militaristic culture viewed any compromise as weakness. Yet throughout, the humans maintained their composure, even when confronted with demands that would have once been considered insulting. "We didn't fight for dominance," Turan explained during a particularly tense session. "We fought for the right to determine our own path forward. That's all we ask, and all we offer in return." The final treaty, formally titled The Concordat of Mutual Recognition and Development, contained 7 core provisions. First, Earth would remain fully independent, not a protectorate or even an associate member of the Conclave, but a sovereign, equal in all diplomatic matters. Second, humans would share their modified shield technology, demonstrating good faith and acknowledging the Conclave's legitimate security concerns. Third, joint research initiatives would be established to study the quantum consciousness technology under strict ethical oversight from multiple species, with unanimous approval required for any applications beyond individual planetary use. Fourth, a demilitarized zone would be established extending 2 light minutes from Earth's orbit, monitored by joint human conclave peacekeeping vessels. Fifth, cultural exchange programs would be implemented immediately, with knowledge and art flowing freely between Earth and conclave worlds. Sixth, trade routes would be established on a graduated timeline with full integration expected within 5 Earth years. Seventh, and perhaps most significantly, the conclave charter would be amended to prevent any future quarantine decisions without the unanimous consent of all member species. 8. Direct acknowledgement that the original decision regarding Earth had been made in fear rather than wisdom. When the final signatures were recorded, both digital and physical, in accordance with traditions from all worlds represented, the chamber erupted not in cheers, but in a profound silence. The enormity of what had nearly been lost, and what had now been gained, settled over the assembled delegates like a weighted cloak. It was Ambassador Leary who broke the silence, her translucent wings catching the starlight as she rose from her seat. Today marks not just peace between our peoples, but the beginning of a transformation for us all. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten, that true strength lies not in isolation, but in connection. In a private chamber after the ceremony, now Ambassador Mev shared a meal with Admiral Toran. The food, synthesized to accommodate their vastly different biologies, was unremarkable, but the conversation was anything but. There's something I still don't understand, Mev admitted, manipulating utensils with delicate tendrils. Your victory was tactically decisive. Our shields were disabled. Our fleet was vulnerable. You could have destroyed us completely, demanded absolute surrender, even claimed conclave territories as compensation. Instead, you offered partnership. Why? Toran paused, considering his words carefully. Because we experienced something during Aurora that changed us fundamentally. 3 billion minds linked together. We felt each other's pain, fear, hope, love, every emotion, every memory, every dream. We understood in that moment that the ability to wage war isn't what makes a species advanced. It's the wisdom to choose peace when war is an option. The Conclave feared humans because you adapt so quickly, Mev said. Because you never surrender, never accept limitations, never stop pushing boundaries. We thought those traits made you dangerous. They do make us dangerous, Toran acknowledged, the cybernetic implant that had replaced his lost eye gleaming slightly as he leaned forward. But not in the way you feared. We're dangerous to problems that seem unsolvable, to barriers others accept as fixed, to the idea that different means incompatible. What you saw as our greatest threat, our adaptability, is actually our greatest gift to offer the galaxy. Ambassador Leary joined them, her ceremonial robes shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her moods. The conclave was founded on the principle that diversity strengthens the whole. Somehow we forgot that when we encountered a species different from any we'd known before. We saw your uniqueness as a threat rather than an opportunity. Different, agreed Toran, but seeking the same things as all sentient life: security, purpose, connection. Maybe that's the most important discovery in all of this, that beneath our biological differences, consciousness itself shares common yearnings across the universe. As their conversation continued, a priority communication arrived from Earth. The quantum network, modified and refined since the Aurora event, had been voluntarily activated again, not for war, but for healing. 3 billion minds had linked briefly. Their combined consciousness focused on rebuilding what conflict had damaged, sharing knowledge across disciplines, understanding one another across barriers of language and culture that had divided humanity. For millennia, the feed showed Earth's atmosphere glowing once more with the distinctive patterns of human neural activity, writ large across the sky. But the patterns were different now, gentler, more harmonic, structured not for defense but for creation. Where once the sky had turned human to protect the planet, now it turned human to celebrate rebirth. This is what we were meant to build, Toran said softly, watching the display. Not a weapon, but a connection. In observatories across conclave, space, scientists watched in wonder as Earth's aurora became visible even at interstellar distances, a beacon announcing humanity's presence not as a threat, but as a new kind of possibility. The mathematical patterns encoded in the light contained information, medical breakthroughs, philosophical insights, technological innovations freely shared with all sentient species. Among the older conclave species, a saying quickly spread. They thought Earth would mourn quietly, but instead, it taught the galaxy to sing. 2 weeks later, aboard the diplomatic vessel Reconciliation returning to Earth, Toran stood at the observation window watching his homeworld grow larger in the view screen. The atmospheric glow had faded to intermittent pulses, the quantum network, now activated only for specific collaborative projects rather than continuously. But something had permanently changed, not just in Earth's relationship with the galaxy, but in humanity's relationship with itself. We needed them to see us, he said softly to Dr. Lin, who had joined him at the window. Not as primitive or dangerous, but as we truly are. Unfinished, imperfect, but always striving. And we needed to see ourselves that way too, she replied, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. The consciousness network showed us our own humanity more clearly than any mirror could have. Behind them, Ambassador Mev approached, making the gesture that among the conclave signified profound understanding. All 4 eyes closed in sequence, tendrils forming a complex pattern that took years to master. Your species turned the sky itself into an extension of your consciousness, the ambassador said. You made your planet think. In all our history, we never imagined such a possibility. Toran smiled. That's what humans do best, Ambassador. We imagine possibilities others haven't considered yet. As Earth filled the view screen, cities twinkled across continents no longer darkened in mourning, but illuminated in hope. Ships from a dozen conclave worlds moved respectfully through the space that had once been a blockade, now an intersection of cultures preparing to learn from one another. Professor Kell joined them, carrying data crystals containing the first formal exchange of cultural archives between Earth and the conclave. We've already had 10,000 volunteers for the first cultural immersion program, he reported. Humans wanting to live and study on conclave worlds. And nearly twice that number from our side, Mev added, including several of my former officers who once considered this assignment a punishment. As the Reconciliation entered Earth's orbit, a final communication arrived from the Conclave High Council. They had voted unanimously to establish an annual observance throughout Conclave space, Aurora Day, to commemorate not the battle, but the moment of first contact between connected consciousnesses. They still don't quite understand what happened. Do they? Lin asked quietly. They will, Toran replied. In time. Some transformations can't be rushed. Below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation, the cradle of a species that had refused to accept limitations imposed by others. They had thought Earth would mourn quietly, accepting its fate as so many worlds had before. Instead, Earth had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. Not merely clever animals with dangerous technology, but beings capable of transforming crisis into communion, isolation into innovation, and enemies into allies. The sky had turned human, and the universe would never be the same. For in that moment when 3 billion minds had linked together, humanity had glimpsed its own future, not as conquerors or even survivors, but as pioneers of a new way of being. They had reached the stars not through force of arms, but through force of connection, and that was a power no blockade could ever contain.